The second panel of today is dedicated to soccer analysis. The question that we ask is, what's the importance of soccer analysis and what is its future? For that, we have Team Santoro, Miguel Heitor, and the panel is moderated by Peter Irizarry. This panel is offered to you by VIDEOBSERVER. Peter, thank you.
All right, everybody, welcome to today's panel, presented to you by Soccer Hub and sponsored by VIDEOBSERVER. The topic of today's panel is the importance of soccer analysis and its future. Today, we have our guest panelists. We have Miguel Heitor, who is the director of development for the Qatar Stars League. And we have Tim Santoro, the head women's soccer coach at North Carolina State University, as part of our panel here today. So, guys, thank you for joining Soccer Hub and VIDEOBSERVER for this panel today. If each of you could just give me a little bit of background about yourselves. We'll start with Miguel here and how you ended up into the position that you're at today.
Okay, Peter, thank you very much for the invitation and for this opportunity to share this experience. I started in Qatar Stars League in 2007. I joined the new formed Qatar Stars League by that time. And one of my first projects that I had in hands was to conduct a market research in terms of match analysis, technologies, and companies during that period in 2007. So during that period, I had several meetings with different companies, such as Prozone, Amisco, Mambo Tango from USA, Sports Analytics from Germany, Sportfast from Belgium, and then we had a team during that period. We analyzed the different options available in the market, and in October 2010 we started the first agreement with Prozone. As you may know, it's a company that's original from England. Actually doesn't exist anymore. The name Prozone was bought by Stats from United States, and from 2010 until today we are working with Prozone match analysis system. And I was appointed as a director of football development 6 years ago to take care of this project and to carry on the match analysis project here in Qatar. So in Qatar we have a centralized match analysis managed by the league itself, and we cooperate with every single football club here in Qatar. At the moment, we have 12 clubs in the first tier of the league.
Fantastic. And Tim, can you do the same? Can you share a little bit of background about yourself with the group?
Yeah, I've been in college coaching in the women's game for almost 25 years now. NC State, we play in the ACC, which is arguably the top league in the university system for women, but it's arguably the top league in the country. It's not far off from our pro league. So to be in this position now is, there's only 14 of these jobs. So it's something that, is a goal for coaches in our profession. The soccer analysis part has been, obviously in 20 some years of being in this job, can imagine we didn't have it 25 years ago, and now it's become a very important part of our profession. The game's evolved in America, and so has the analysis part. And match analysis, Prozone, Instat have all been companies that I've been associated with over the years, and ultimately now VIDEOBSERVER, which is I believe is one of the best platforms I've worked with in terms of its ability to, is very adaptable to what you need. But overall in America, I think the American soccer person has become more knowledgeable, more understanding of the game. Technology has become such an important part of everything that we do. And if you put those two together, this has become very, very important, not just for coaches, but I think the use of it for players. They've become a lot more understanding of it, dependent of it, and they look forward to having this on a daily basis because we use it not just for matches, but we also are able to use it for our training as well. So from a coach's perspective, from doing this a long time, to see our profession evolve has been very important. To see the analysis portion evolve has been incredible. And I think we've only scratched the surface. I think it seems like every year there's more and more out there that we're expanding to. And, Video Observer for us has been incredible over these last 6 to 8 months.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the kind words. We like hearing that kind of feedback when it comes to the platform, obviously, but also, for the understanding of the importance of it. I'm going to pose a question to both of you. And Tim, I'm going to start off with you on this one. Do you feel that analysis in general is more of a trend, or is it more of a fixture in what you do on a day-to-day basis as a coach?
Well, it's a fixture. It's not going anywhere. I think it's going to be just expand even more. Just the capabilities of the last 10 years of you could just take a game and cut it yourself. And now with all the capabilities, again, as I said before, I think we've just scratched the surface. I think every year the platforms add more and more capabilities that make it easier. And again, not just for the coaches, but for the players to log on, to see things, to do things, to analyze themselves. It's not just video; it's the numbers, the statistics. The world we live in, that stuff's never leaving. And I think there is still an extent of what's too much and what's not enough. I think as coaches and as analysts, you have to make sure you know that balance. But I think it's too much an essential part of the game. That is never going to leave. You can even watch games on TV now. They have the tactical cam and the coach's cam, and that stuff is built around analysis with possession stats, and you can do that when you watch a game on your computer, on your TV. And I think that's what's drawing people to that side of the game. I think that's what's drawing people to understand the game. So no, it's not going anywhere. And it's an enjoyable part of the game. It's great to be able to break this game down. Where 20 years ago in this country, you were lucky if you could get one game a week on television. So I like the direction it's going. I think it's our job as humans to balance what's too much and what's not enough.
And you bring up a very interesting point. That fan engagement, right? Especially here in the States. If you have a smart TV or a lot of cable providers have options that when you're watching a game, and it doesn't matter whether you're here in Chicago or in North Carolina, and even if you're watching, let's say, an English Premier League game. I know there's a button on my cable remote that I can just click, and then I can start seeing lifetime stats and things like that. And I think, what's happening is we're engaging our fan base on a much deeper level than we ever have before, where the importance of the statistics and the analytics that we make available to them, they are craving more and more information, obviously, that's relevant to them, not just for the team itself, but also for the individual athletes. So I'm going to present the same exact question to you, Miguel, especially with your insight in Qatar. And is game analysis a trend, or is it something that's going to be a permanent fixture in Qatar?
As I mentioned before, we started in 2007 the investigation on the topic, and we implemented the match analysis project centralized to every club in 2010. And since then, we continue this journey of match analysis. And I believe that this is a really important aspect in every football club in Qatar, to continue their development and to continue to identify talents in the youth academies, in the youth clubs. As in Qatar, the population is it's not the same as United States, for example. We have about 400,000 nationals, and if you find a talented player, it has to be considered as a precious, let's say, a diamond, and you need to work afterwards the ability of the player to so the player could be a better player. So I think this is something to continue, and the vision for Qatar entities, football entities, is to continue supporting the match analysis, because the match analysis, it's not only about data collection, it's about video analysis, it's about the training analysis, and then you need to combine all the elements together and to come up with the best strategy in the training sessions and the match during the games. So I believe it's something that to continue. No, it's not only a trend, it's to continue.
Miguel, you bring up a really interesting point. I'm going to ask a question to the both of you that wasn't in the panel listing of questions here. Cultivation of athletes is really, really important. And I know that in other parts of the world, when you find an athlete that's young, that shows a great deal of talent, you want to kind of cultivate that and let that player kind of evolve, right? At what age do you think analysis could be beneficial in cultivating next generation players? And I'm going to go ahead and pitch that question right back to you, Miguel. When do you think analysis of an athlete, at what age, should start?
In football, in sports in general, because my background is also in physical education. I have a degree in sports and physical education and science. So I believe by 14 years old, you need to set up, it's the best age to identify whether these athletes will become, has a potential to become a professional player in the future. But of course, there is external factors that may influence whether the player will continue and persuade the professional level or not, because it depends on where he lives, if he have a financial support, if he have conditions, if he has all the facilities available. So I believe the 14 years old is the key age to start, and the analysis can start from that age, from 14 years old, 15 years old. But of course, not the physical data, more technical data and video analysis, and to analyze the technical and the tactical, whether the player will replicate in the match what the coach explained to him prior to the game, to make sure that he's following the instructions of the coach. So to be very straightforward, 14, 15 years old, I think it's the ideal age, in my opinion, to start analyzing players.
Very, very, very interesting stuff. I know that here in the United States, we have a lot of our academies, as well as, clubs that some are more competitive, that have multiple teams, whether it's girls teams or boys teams. And within a specific category, they can have multiple teams, and they are segmenting some of the more competitive athletes at a very, very young age, some as young as 8 years old, into their more competitive teams, their A teams, if you will. And it's really interesting to see this unfold here in the U.S. from my perspective, on cultivating those athletes at such a young age and having them understand the basic, more rudimentary level of analysis and the importance. And the young athletes really love the engagement of that, specifically because who doesn't like seeing themselves, right? So it's been really, really interesting. Now, Tim, I know that for you, you are competing with a lot of other prestigious programs, just like yourself, right? That you're competing for high-end. So, in your opinion, what would be the ideal age to start cultivating those athletes on that level?
I don't know a quantifiable number. I would like to see it below the age of 10, only because, well, it's funny you asked this question, because when in the initial question about, is this a trend, is this going to last, my first thought was, how do we get this to kids earlier in America? Because I believe so much that the gap that we're missing in our soccer culture is we don't live the game. We don't see the game enough at the younger ages. And I think kids are such visual learners. I think, again, it'd be about us. How do we balance what we give them? You don't want to give them too much information, too many statistics. But I think the visual part for kids, especially in this country, especially for girls, I don't think can come soon enough. I think the more they can see the game, whether it's themselves or even video of professionals, of national teams, I don't think that can come young enough. And I think there's platforms in video analysis that you can make it fun, you can make it interactive, but yet they can also see themselves and they can learn. And I think that is what America is missing the most on both sides, men and women, in terms of development. People talk about coaching, people talk about playing. It's not in our culture enough yet. And I think if you can get this kind of stuff to younger kids in a simple, basic way that's visual, I think it would make a massive difference. So for me, I'd love to see it before the age of 10, 7, 8, especially for girls. I think it would just make such a big difference in their development as players, to see stuff. And again, you wouldn't go through the same analysis we go through with 18 to 20-year-old college players, but they could see themselves, they could see some pro stuff broken down in a fun way, but yet have it be educational, have it be visual. All these kids, even the 18-year-olds aren't much different than the 8-year-olds. They want something quick, they want something visual, they want something they can touch, and then they're gone with it. And the more you can do that at a younger age and see this sport has that aspect, I think it would make a big difference. It's not much different than the Xbox they're playing or the FIFA 2018. That stuff is visual. That stuff is electronic. And if we can control and manipulate that a little bit in a learning component, but they're still enjoying the visual, then I think that's the step. I think getting into the youth with some of this is the step that has to happen in this country.
And you bring up a lot of valid points. I know part, as Chief Sales and Marketing Officer here for Video Observer, I know part of our short-term and our long-term strategies are to really get and democratize more our platform into the masses. We want athletes that have that genuine interest and that raw talent to be cultivated, and then have that access to those next levels of play, whether it's traveling teams, with youth, some getting into the in front of the right people like yourself, Tim, that will have the ability to get them onto that highest level of play. And this is a dramatic difference when we talk about the United States here versus the rest of the world, right? Where we don't have as many organized sport clubs, football clubs, like there are in Europe. We rely heavily on our education system to kind of cultivate these players and to bring them into the forefront. But at the same time, we lose a lot of potential talent that could be out there by not cultivating it properly. So thank you both for that answer. I have somewhat of a silly question up next for the both of you. When it comes to analysis, does it have a real impact on your team's performance? How much of analysis is attributed to the overall performance of a team versus the other crucial elements like the great coaching staff, the pool of talent that you have available to you. How much of the analysis does that affect the team's performance? And Miguel, I'm going to go ahead and shoot that question to you, please.
I can talk about this question on more league perspective, because I see this topic in a more general, in a generic, as I'm not in the club, I'm managing the project from a global point of view. And in every Qatari football club, we have one performance analyst, which is assigned by the league, by us, and is working full-time in the club. And his main priority is to analyze the data available provided by stats, technical, physical, and the video analysis. And of course, this data has to be interpreted. The interpretation of this match analysis has to be conducted during the week for the pre-match and post-match analysis. And of course, I believe 10 to 15% of this data is the key of success in every football club. Now it depends on the coaching staff whether to use or not, whether to understand the strength of this data analysis that the club has in hands. Because I believe if they know how to use it, they will see some details that if you don't have it, you can't see. Because it's already studied that 40% of the game, you just retained 40% of the game. And the other 60%, normally you forget what happened, the actions that happened during the game. So the match analysis is a great tool to fill that gap, that 60%. And if you have a match analyst in the club, is a massive help for the coaching staff to help you to identify all the details and to prepare the next game. So I believe this topic is really important to carry on and to move ahead.
Fantastic. And Tim, again, with I'm going to pose the same question to you. Obviously, playing in the in my opinion, if not the most competitive conference in the United States, and ranking the way that you did, I believe that you ranked 3 this past season here. Did you not?
Yes.
In your opinion, the analysis that you used this year, with all of the other elements, how would you rate that? And then if you could elaborate a little bit on how you use that as well.
The analysis part for us has been massive. I think the analysis is what makes us better coaches. I think it saves us sometimes, even if we don't know what we're doing. It sure looks like it with analysis. But really, you can't, to have that stuff at your fingertips. Again, it's our job to balance what we show the players, but I think it's important for them to have the visual cues, especially when you're doing stuff related to set pieces, especially when you're doing stuff related to individual players. There's always going to be broad tactical things that I think the coach or the analyst needs to cut themselves. But when you have objective data, objective video on specific situations that can be pulled out in seconds, I think that stuff is invaluable for the players. Because again, whether they're 8 years old or 18, the visual learning, the visual understanding of the game that can be presented through analysis it's a tool that, just from a time perspective, if you didn't have it as a coach, how do you repaint that picture? How do you show that picture again? There's really no other way you could do it without this type of analysis. We use it In the university system here in America, the turnaround sometimes of games can be pretty quick. Sometimes we have a week between games. Sometimes we only have 2 or 3 days. So to be able to get this type of information and data back in such a short turnaround for us has been it's changed, and it's changed in the 20 years I've been doing this. And it's just something that I can't imagine not having now. And I think a lot of coaches would say that in this country, is not having that ability to assist you. Because, as Miguel said before, we only see a certain percentage of the game, and analysis really does make up the other percentage of the game that you don't cover, that your mind doesn't remember or your eyes might not see. Emotion plays into it. You can have a perspective of a game 10 minutes after the game, whether you win or lose. And this data, these objective numbers, the video sometimes can kind of balance out maybe what you saw, didn't see, what you thought, what you didn't think. It's just something that, that makes us coaches a lot better than maybe we really are.
Interesting. Thanks for that. I think that when it comes to, analysis, I always like to ask, some of my more competitive coaches when we review things together. For example, we're just getting ready to roll out our year-end review with all of our coaches, and Tim, we'll probably have that before we meet you out at the show in Philadelphia here. But I always like to ask, who's your playmaker, right? And it's a very simple question. More often than not, what I find when the coach's understanding of who their playmakers are, right? When you look at the raw information that the statistics can provide you, sometimes more often than not, there's a lot of surprises available in that question. So it's always really interesting to kind of present that to them. Up next on the panel questions is the profile of a soccer analyst, and obviously we're talking about two very distinct backgrounds here. Miguel, obviously your time in Europe as well as in Qatar, you understand that the football culture is a very specific way there. There's a way things are done there that's very different than here in the States, where a lot of our analysts, if you will, are predominantly the coaching staff, right? They're a member of the active coaching staff. There's not a lot of individual designations for analysts up until, I would say, even in some of the USL teams and above, where those are the very few. But even those guys are obviously attached to the coaching staff. But in your opinion, Miguel, what would be an ideal profile of a good soccer analyst?
I think it depends on the context of the country, but you might have some similarities of the profile of the analyst. For example, here in Qatar, the analyst, he must adapt to a new country, for example, a new culture, a new way of a new football culture as well, because the majority of our analysts are expats. They are from England, they are from Portugal, from Brazil, from Italy, from Spain, from Tunisia, from Morocco, from France. We have a different nationalities. One of the reasons is because majority of our head coaches are also expats. They are foreigners. They are from Portugal, from Denmark, from Brazil, from Egypt. So the language is very important for us. And the most important for us, it's also the adaptation. So the analysts, when we hire the analysts, we see the profile, we see the background, the years of experience, of course, in previous clubs. It's a must. An analyst that he knows about using match analysis, can be VIDEOBSERVER, can be stats, can be Opta, can be Prozone. It's a must as a profile. But it's also really important, the relationship. If this analyst is able to adapt to a new environment, because being an analyst, you need to get the trust from the coach. The coach must believe in that person, because our approach here in Qatar is a centralized approach. So it's the league to convince the new coach to utilize the match analysis system in their club. So imagine if a coach join a club next week, the analyst has been in that club for the last 3 years. So this analyst, he knows every single player in the club in terms of data, in terms of the profile of the player. So we believe this analyst is very valuable in the club. Now, the way how the coach will utilize the performance analyst is up to the coach, because ultimately is the decision maker. But the profile of the analyst, he must have this ability to adapt very quickly to the new head coach and to transfer all the data and all the analysis available in the club. And of course, he has to have the ability to with Excel. Sorry, I had a visitor.
Like a big dog.
Yes. It's an unexpected visitor.
No worries.
But of course, if the analyst he has ability to work with Excel, great, because nowadays the data you need to generate graphics, lots of information goes into graphics. So an Excel expert will be great to have it. Video editor is also important, because to transfer the message through video, sometimes the image will remain longer than just a simple number, and sometimes the numbers are not 100% effective. When I say this, I say in a way, if we talk about an example of accurate passes, I need to understand where these passes were made, if it is in a final third, if it is in my half field, if it was a forward passes, side passes, back passes, dangerous passes. So we need to break down the passes into images as well. It's not only the numbers, but the images. So the numbers are important, but the images are really important to understand the objective of these passes.
Very interesting. And Tim, I know it's a little bit different, for you. You have someone within your coaching staff that you designate, to be in charge of analysis, that also obviously has other duties and responsibilities for the organization as well. But in your opinion, for that specific function, what would you say is an ideal profile of a soccer analyst for you at the very least?
Well, more and more in the college game, we're starting to have positions where you can have someone that does this type of work for you. It's an interesting concept to hear him describe that, because I can't imagine not doing it myself. Because, like you said, the trust factor between the coach and the analyst has to be high. There has to be a big understanding of what that coach wants. And for me, maybe I micromanage too much, but to be able to control that along with my staff is important. We're the ones that present. We're the ones that do most of the work. We're not as proficient probably on the sides that he was mentioning in terms of utilizing technology and sometimes with different platforms in order to we don't have that kind of savvy. So that's where it's nice to have someone that works with your program, whether it's a director of operations or a director of match analytics, that we are able to start to do on a volunteer basis here. But in America, the coaches have to do a lot of this. And at this point, I can't imagine if I was giving a full-time person to do that I would be able to delegate that and not do it, because it's just something that you're so hands-on. You have your own vision, you have your own opinions, you have your own way. You want to get it to the team. To be able to do it myself or to do it very closely with my two assistants. I think if we could have anything, we would have someone that understands the technology part of all this, because sometimes we're dummies 101 in terms of using all these platforms. But that's what Video Observer has been big for us. Is it's such an easy platform to use, and then to get to the players. That's the part that's been great for us in this last 6 to 8 months. Is Video Observer allows you to do it in a very simple way, a very efficient way, a very effective way, but yet a very professional way. And that's been. I think that's good for a lot of coaches in America who aren't the most savvy in terms of technology.
And one thing to kind of point out about that the last portion of your statement in Miguel, because there's so many differences in soccer, which I still think is rapidly growing here in the United States, and it's maturing as far as some of our more, let's say, traditional sports. Even though it's been played just as long as everything else, it's just it's not up there with like American football and basketball and baseball and things like that. Is the overall importance of making it available. Okay, so whereas in your league, Miguel, you have dedicated analysts that are assigned with each club, and here one of the things that Video Observer went out of its way to do is, again, try to democratize the process, as opposed to just using our software and training an individual analyst that's part of a team. We offer a direct service, so we basically are the analysts for each of the teams that we represent here. And again, the massive cultural difference when you kind of look at the what some parts of the other world are doing versus what we're doing here in the States. And this is all just a conscious effort to continue to grow the sport and to keep it at a steady pace with everyone else that's out there, all the teams in the rest of the parts of the world. The next question on the panel here, guys, is talking about the future, right? And I already know that in Qatar, as Miguel has shared with us, that there are separate departments for their analysts. But do you think that that'll be something that'll migrate to more of the main technical team? Do you think that there'll be analyst coaches, for example, in the future, as the evolution of an analysis continues in Qatar?
The future, the match analysis are evolving very rapidly, very fast. And here in Qatar is the same. Our model of analysis is only set up for the first tier of the league. So the top 12 clubs have match analysts in the clubs. But when we go to the second division, we don't have yet a dedicated match analyst. As well in the youth clubs, means under 19, under 17, and under 15. We started this year the analysis of these categories, as well the under 23. But none of these categories have one match analyst yet. It's important to integrate the analysis in these youth categories, to integrate all the analysis together. But this is a long process. It's a long process. It might take a few more years until these youth levels reach QSL level, because we have more than 1,000 matches analyzed in the league. So we can compare the trends of each club, each player individual, across the last 6-7 years, so we can make some conclusions now. So the future for us is to integrate all the match analysis across all the leagues available in Qatar. But of course, we have to be also realistic, because we are talking about the investment, and the investment it's quite massive. And at the moment we have one performance analyst in the club, but the ideal is to have perhaps 5, 6, 7 analysts as the top team in the world, like Manchester United, Manchester City, Real Madrid. I had the privilege to visit Inter Milan in March, last March in 2017. And just in Inter Milan, the first team, they have 5 analysts just to focus in the first team. Some is dedicated to video analysis, some is dedicated to training analysis, some is dedicated to opponent analysis, and then this is a long department, a big department to analyze just for match analysis. And the integration with the coaching staff is a must. So they have to work very closely together. So I believe that in the future, the clubs, they should consider a department in every club. I know the challenges. Is when we go to budget, we are considering we need to dedicate budget to pay salaries to the staff, also to get technologies on board, like VIDEOBSERVER, which is a technology that we embraced last year. So VIDEOBSERVER is a new platform that we established in Qatar Stars League, which is a very ambitious company. And VIDEOBSERVER is growing very rapidly. And in terms of game tagging, is quite advanced and very practical and very simple platform to use. And recently we had Andre Rocha with us in December to activate an educational training course. And we had 30 participants in the course with from different areas, like head coaches, match analysts, some journalists as well, because we can talk about many areas, because journalism, it's also the media, it's also very important in terms of match analysis. So again, the future match analysis has to be part of the club strategy.
Thank you so much for that answer, Miguel. And you bring up a really interesting point when you include, the importance of media and their desire to be engaged in it. It was a topic that we had talked a little bit earlier on in the panel, and I think that it's progressing more and more and more. I know that in 2016 Euro Cup, when we had our platform that we developed for Mayo at that moment in time, that was something that was very crucial. When they were broadcasting the Euro Cup games in Portugal, and we were very happy and excited to be a part of that, to provide the entire population of Portugal those quality statistics. So Tim, I'm going to pose the same question to you. I'm going to change it up a little bit here for you, because not only do I know that you're the head coach of the team, but I also know that you're the chief financial officer of the team, as well as many other hats that you have to wear for the organization. In your opinion, do you think that analysis will end up becoming its own position within your organization, ultimately being, more departmentalized, compartmentalized, if you will, within NC State's program?
Well, that's a loaded question. Would I like it to? Yes. Will I get the funding to have a position like that? That's not something I can answer. I think every coach, right now, what you see a lot is if there's related majors at our universities, they'll find students who can either do it as volunteer or as grad work or as credit. And that's something from the university system. I would love to see this kind of field become part of, in the sports management or sports business related majors. You could have this type of field as either a major or a minor, because it's that prevalent in every sport in America now. I mean, you go through Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, NHL. The analysis of sports in America has become such a big field, but yet you don't see it a lot in the university system in terms of as an educational opportunity. If that was to happen, and I've met with our people here at NC State in the sports management side, is how do we get some of that into our curriculum? Then you could use those students, because I would love to have that. It's just right now we don't have the resources or we don't have the personnel. The other thing to this is this step is what's needed in our youth game, men and women. Clubs got to have people that are doing match analysis. That should be a priority now for these directors of coaching in these youth clubs. When you have positions, to have a match analysis staff to analyze things for the youth players all the way up to your professional teams. So I think it's two different things, whether it's universities getting into the educational curriculum, but then also in the youth clubs to put more emphasis on this because it's so important. And the kids understand it. I think sometimes the kids understand this part of it more than the adults do, because they do so much on devices, on iPads, on iPhones, on Xbox, on PlayStation. This wouldn't be foreign to them. And I think getting that out into the mainstream, whether it's university or into the youth, is the next logical step. It all takes funding, and that'll be resources is always the bottom line to everything.
And you bring up a really good point, and I can tell you firsthand that the amount of universities that are beginning to add an analysis component into an existing curriculum, or outright just adding it, analysis for as its own, kind of course of study. I'm starting to see more and more and more locally here in Chicago. We have some pretty well-known academic schools, and I know that for sure two of them are introducing that as part of a course of study. And it's really interesting to see where this is going to ultimately end up in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, because of technology always changing, right? VIDEOBSERVER as a software company, we're already thinking about what we're going to be building 4 years from now. And a lot of that comes from feedback from customers just like yourself and Miguel as well, because that feedback is important for us in order to build that next generation of tech. But we also need that next generation of techie people, if you will, that will be able to use that, build those statistics, and have the capacity in which to explain those statistics to the hands-on people within the organization, right? In order for you to do the best job that you can do coaching, and you need to be well armed, and to be well armed, you need that information. So it's really interesting that you talk about universities and getting them engaged, talking to the administration and trying to cultivate these programs. I wholeheartedly agree with you. It's such an important part for what we need to do here in the United States. I know that we're somewhat a little bit behind to the rest of the world in that respect, but all very interesting. The next question on the panel for you guys, and this is kind of like a post-Christmas wish list, right? So think about, both of you are currently using the VIDEOBSERVER platform. Think about the technology as you know it today, okay? And what would you like that tech to be able to do for you tomorrow? Miguel, I know that you use it on a broader base within the entire league itself, but what would you like to see technology offer in the form of analytics?
No, I want to see technology, a easy tool to be utilized and to transfer the information to the players in the easiest way, because the players for me are the most important element in soccer. Without the players, you can't perform. So the coach must have the ability to transfer his tactics, his ideas, his vision through an easy platform. And I hope, as a client, to see new technologies presenting the tools in the easiest, fastest way, a simple way. So we will benefit, so the players will benefit, and the football in general will benefit. Presentations are very important. After the interpretation of the data, it's the presentation. So you need to present your strategy. So if it goes directly to VIDEOBSERVER, perhaps my recommendation is to come up with a tool of presentation into graphics, into drawings, 3D drawings, and transfer these technologies to the coaches.
Miguel, thank you so much for sharing that. Now, Tim, I know that we haven't finished our postseason assessment yet, and I know that you have already presented me a list of some things to kind of highlight. But again, this is a future Christmas wish list here as far as technology and your exposure to multiple platforms, throughout your years of coaching. What would you like to see analysis technology evolve to? What would you like it to see? What would you like it to ultimately be for you as that coach, and how can it be beneficial to you?
Oh, that's such an easy question, and I wish I could get this for Christmas. Live time. Live time capabilities on like an iPad or a sketch pad, where you can telestrate replays, still pictures, still shots. The quickest way to be able to use something on the sideline when someone comes off the field, to be able to have stuff at your disposal at halftime when you have 15, 20 minutes. To me, that's the one thing I would love to have at the fingertips, is being able to lifetime telestration replays and still shots on a device that's in my hand or at a staff member's hand that's sitting next to me. That's an easy one. Make it happen. Make it happen.
Christmas might come a little early for you in 2018. I got something special I want to kind of show you when we move together in Philly for the coaches convention. Something that we've worked on in the past, and for example, we can integrate VO Live, which is something that's readily available. A lot of our coaches this past season have used the live tool to give them that deep insight at the half and right after a match. But there's other components that we do offer that I'd love to kind of show you. Can't say too much about it here on Soccer Hub panel, but we'll have a sidebar at the convention. Guys, it looks like that's pretty much all the time that we're going to be able to have here dedicated to today's panel. Want to thank both Miguel Heitor and Tim Santoro for joining us here for today's panel regarding soccer analysis and its future. I'm Peter Irizarry, Chief Sales Marketing Officer for VIDEOBSERVER, and we encourage all of you to join us for the next webinar with our next guest panelists. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.